Welcome to Safe and Sound, sponsored by White Mountain Fire and Life Safety. I'm your host, Allison Hefner, and today we have Commander Dave Sargent with the Pinetop Lakes PD. How are you?
Hello, Allison. How are you today?
Good, good. So we wanted to take off from where we left off with Blue Courage and talk more about why it is necessary.
Why it is necessary. So let's back up. We talked a lot about the nobility of policing, but never really defined that last time. We'll get there, but let's back up and see where we are and why we're where we are. I started in law enforcement in 1990, and I remember in the late 90s, early 2000, there was this push, and the push came from the fact that there were too many officers that had been killed in felonious assaults. And so training stepped back and said, what are we doing wrong? How do we stop this from happening? And that's where a lot of training the warrior mindset began, is that officers were going into some situations way too complacent. Their guard was not up. They were not in what we call condition red when they should have been in condition red. They weren't in any even condition orange, being alert to what's going on around them when these assaults took place. And so they started teaching officers this warrior mindset, that you've got to be prepared at any moment to engage in a battle for your life, and you have to have the mindset that you're going to win, because if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to win. And it did what it was supposed to do. Where we are here today is, I think that back then we should have looked a little bit more of what a warrior really is. Because as you look back in history, the warriors who really made an impact on society were principled warriors. Whether you believe with the principles that they stood for or not, they had principles at their core and they operated from a base of principles. Today in law enforcement, there's this, and it's coming more and more to the front from the President's Council on 21st Century Policing. The report that they issued is that we need to move from warriors to guardians. That we need to be guardians of the democracy, guardians of the public, guardians of, and I think that in a way, I cringe when I hear guardian to warrior, because if you really know what a warrior is a guardian. The swords and the shields only come out when you have to do the fighting. And when the fighting's not there, that warrior is a guardian. And that warrior is a guardian to the people and to the society that he serves. So that's kind of where I think Blue Courage steps in to try to fill in a gap that for years has been missing in the training model. Last time we talked about the fact that we equip officers very well with skill sets and tool sets, but we're not focused on their heart set and their mindset. And because of that, we're having officers who get a paycheck, one paycheck in retirement, and then they end up passing away because they have been in such toxic environments that they don't know how to deal with those environments. And over the years, that wears on you. Most cardiologists will just put a law enforcement officer in a high-risk category, whether they have any heart issue or not, because of the cortisol that's continually dumped into our system when we are in those fight or flight situations where we're confronting things that the normal citizen doesn't see, doesn't confront, except for once in a great while. We're having that dumped in our hearts continually. So Blue Courage doesn't just teach how to be guardians of the people, but it also teaches personal welfare and what it is that you have to do to make sure that your heart and mind is right before you get in the vehicle to start your shift. So again, and not to use cliches, over the years they've focused on skill sets and tool sets. We've been neglecting the heart set and the mindset of our officers, and that's where Blue Courage steps in. If I can share a couple of things, we talked a lot about nobility of policing. Nobility of policing, and that word, nobility and noble, what does that mean? If I can tell you that noble means to be of outstanding moral character, and nobility means nobleness of mind, character, or spirit. We don't want our officers, they're pictured often as robots. The public doesn't see us as human beings.
You're right.
And a lot of that, I think, is on us because we impact people one contact at a time. And if you see an officer who's truly vested in his work and his job, who's being a guardian, he sits down with that victim and we talked about compassion last time, that it's an empathy for someone's situation that they're in, but compassion goes one step further, and a person with compassion wants to do everything they can to alleviate the suffering that that person's in. And so that's also where Blue Courage goes. If we can, I can read one more quote, and this was by Dr. Stephen R. Covey. Policing is one of our most noble professions. The actions of any police officer in an instant can impact an individual for life, even a community for generations. Given this realization, every police officer must be centered on what is important. Service, justice, fundamental fairness are the foundational principles in which every police action must be grounded. The nobility of policing demands the noblest of character. Now already it's a rigorous task to become a law enforcement officer. There's hoops that you have to jump through that you just don't have to jump through to do many other jobs in society. What we want is when officers get into an academy and graduate that academy, we talked a little bit about the fact that when you graduate the academy, you have these great ideals of going out and helping people. And then things happen along the way that kind of beat the officer down a little bit, and maybe they're not as willing to want to go out and help someone. Like, we are people too, and we have situations that happen in our lives, and we don't have always the best day. But we want officers, this training helps officers first realize that you're not having a good day. Second, do things that interfere with not having the good day to turn it into a good day. And much of that comes out of service. Much of that comes out of serving your fellow being. So when we talk about the nobility of policing, it's restoring that noble character, that we're not just warriors that can take care of business when business needs to be taken care of, but when that business has been taken care of, we have that compassion side to help people get the services that they need, to help people find resolution to their problems. Because let's face it, if we respond out to a scene, let's take domestic violence, for instance. Officers that go out to domestic violence often, especially young officers, have no idea what to do in a call for domestic violence.
Scary.
They have not a whole lot of life experience, and if they don't come from that type of environment, how is a 21-year-old, 22-year-old going to go in and fix a problem in a house that has 40 years of history? And the bottom line is they're probably not going to, but they can be the turning point to turn things around. And I've seen officers go out and handle domestic violences and cases, and it's just another call, and we're going to get this done, and we're get done with the paperwork, and then we're on to the next one. And I've seen officers that go in and say, hey, you know what, look, you're in a bad situation. What can we do to help you out of this? And actually sit down with that victim and pick their brain to find out, what can we do to help you here? Because if we don't do that, we're going to be back out there next week. We're going to be back out there the week after that. And then pretty soon a domestic violence turns into an aggravated assault. And if there's no intervention, then that aggravated assault, chances are, turns into a homicide. And now the few minutes that we could have spent up front talking with a victim, we're spending hours on the back end in a homicide investigation. I'd rather spend all that time up front.
In prevention.
In prevention, that's right. Law enforcement, that's another misnomer, is that law enforcement is here to respond to crime. Our actual mission is to prevent crime.
Absolutely.
And so when we sit down with people, for instance, you go to somebody's house who's had a home broken into, there's an officer that will go and just take the report. Here, give me all the facts. Here's a sheet. Send it in if there's anything else that you can think of. that will help us with this report. Then there's the officer that stops and says, okay, let's look at what does this residence look like at night, and what security precautions are you taking, and actually will walk with that victim through and do a security check on their home. You know, this is what you can do to prevent this from happening in the future, so that we're not back out at your house. And it's that type of police service that I think all police agencies want to provide. And I think that most officers in their heart want to provide that. This program just comes in and reinforces that not only do we want to, but this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to conduct business. We talked a little bit about the coin.
Yes.
Putting that in the pocket. That every single time that coin goes in the pocket, even if they don't read, do the right thing for the right reason, their subconscious picks that up. And every day they put that coin in their pocket, that's an investment that's being made in them. That's away from the skill set and the tool set. That's pointed at heart set and mindset. And there's other things along the way that we're doing and will be doing along the way to move officers from, let's just go out and get this done, to, hey, how do I treat, if you're a total stranger, how do I treat you like a family member and make sure that you're taken care of like a family member should be taken care of? And I think that's how we keep policing at a local level. I think that's how we prevent federalizing of police. You look around the world and see every place where they have federal police, not a good idea.
No, you're right.
And so law enforcement needs to take the lead on this, needs to be out there making sure that they're investing with each contact that they have a relationship of trust, so that if we ever get to that point that the community demands, no, we want our local police because our local police are doing it right.
And they're part of our community and we trust them.
That's right. Because if we're out talking to people that way, then people see, whoa, they're not the robot, they're not what we see on TV because one bad apple, it doesn't matter where it is, and it may not even be a bad apple. It's just he's in an unfortunate or bad circumstance that now the media has taken out of context, or because really all the things that you're seeing on TV, not all of them are the way that they're being reported. Oh,
absolutely. And there's a good amount of people that understand that and get behind the police and what they're doing, and then there's the other side that don't help the situation at all.
That's right, aggravate it further.
Yeah, and the good news is we're starting to see those that do get behind policing, like especially on Facebook, starting to put things out. Hey, this was a cop that helped me. Hey, this is this. And showing, look, just because there was that situation here does not mean that situation is everywhere. And here, look, I mean, we just drove the other day, we're coming back from Tucson, and there was a police officer on the side of the road helping this lady who looked like a single mom with 5 kids put a tire back on the car, and he had his cruiser set to where it protected the family and everything. And I was like, that's awesome that he's out doing that. It sucks because he's in his gear and everything makes it harder
Changing
than normal.
a tire and full equipment is just not the easiest thing, but it's the right thing.
You're right.
And that's commendable that he would do that.
Well, and then you have the guy that the neighbor was complaining about the kids playing basketball. Have you seen that?
I've not.
Well, the cop came in, and these kids are playing basketball and with a hoop in the street, and the cop came in and for the complaint, and he grabbed the basketball and started playing with them.
Shooting with them.
Yep, and then Shaquille O'Neal got a hold of that, and they went back and brought Shaquille in and played with the kids basketball. And Shaquille even came in and said, supporting the police force.
Well, I hope that we're starting to see a turn here. I hope that we're starting to see that the things that we see across the country, the negative things, some of those, the officer could have acted differently.
Yes.
Without question. But some of those are also being misreported. And some of the bigger ones that I have personal knowledge of, having gone and talked to the people that were intimately involved and saw what they released to the press and what the press decided that they wanted to share, it was absolutely a sensationalization of the circumstance for ratings or for whatever reason, but what actually happened there wasn't reported accurately.
And sadly, that is not just with the police force. I know Ole Miss, I have a family member who is high up in that, and they had a situation, and what went to the press was completely different than what the press said, and the press controls that, and they control the chaos, and they like to create it a lot of the time, and I'm talking about big media. I'm not talking about local
Sure.
media. Local media is very supportive.
We do have a very good relationship with our
Yes.
local media.
And they're very supportive for our community. But when you get out there in Fox News or, CBS or whatever those are, it's a little bit different because they're like, well, that's boring. Let's spice it up.
And I heard a couple stories just this last weekend. I was at a training that we talked about briefly before, and I've heard a couple of instances where even the national media now is starting to say, "No, we're not gonna report it that way," and are opting to report it the right way.
Oh, good.
So I think that Blue Courage, there's this argument out there that what this program does is it causes officers to become passive. It becomes officers to not be the warrior or the protector of the people that a warrior is supposed to be.
Or be ready for the situation.
And that's the thing, is that I've read through this from the beginning to the end, and I've sat through the entire class. There have been several times, or there are several times in here, that they say, we do not want you to let your guard down. We don't expect you to take bullets. We don't expect you to take a knife. We don't expect you to receive an assault if you see one coming. We want you to be every bit on guard as you have been, but also consider these things over here.
Yes.
That if you're seen as a robot, you're probably acting like a robot. You need to be that person, and you need to exercise that compassion. When it's time to fight, and when we must fight, then gosh darn it, if we're not on our A game, there's going to be some serious injuries and loss of life. We don't want that. And Blue Courage, nowhere does it say that's what we want. What it says is you need to be that way, but you also need to consider the full picture of what a warrior is. And it's not just the shield and sword. It is the caring, it's the personalization of things, it's building relationships of trust with people. And you can't build relationships of trust with people if you're not talking with people and you're not helping people out of the circumstance that they're in.
And investing in their problem.
That's right.
And that is important, because then now you just have a person that goes, wow, and instead of me being a number, I'm actually a person to this person, and they care.
Yes.
I'm not quota or whatever.
I had a chance to debate this last weekend at this training, the Guardian versus Warrior. And one of the instances that I used is, can we think of better trained warriors on the face of planet Earth right now than our U.S. Navy SEALs? Because I can't think of any.
No.
The things that those guys go through to get there, to have that calling in life, the things that they then endure thereafter are incredibly admirable, are awe-inspiring in many instances. And the amazing thing is that we mostly hear about the things that they do, the military actions that they do. But when you get in and start reading some of the books that these gentlemen have written when they're done, I don't know if you're aware of the Adam Brown story, who's a Navy SEAL who lost his life in Afghanistan, but it goes in and it talks in great detail of when he wasn't fighting that war, he was petitioning for shoes for kids from home so that he could give those out to kids in these villages along the battlefield that did not have shoes. Then you have Eric Greitens, who is alive. He's a retired Navy SEAL, and he wrote a book called The Heart and the Fist, and he talks about there's a time for fighting, and then there's a time for the humanitarian side of things. And if I can quote something that he said here, he said, "Warriors are warriors not because of their strength, but because of their ability to apply strength to a good purpose. Sometimes that good purpose is preserving life, and sometimes that good purpose is lifting someone up who's in the dumps, who's hit the bottom in life, lift them up and give them another chance." And that's what we want our officers to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I really like that quote, and it makes a lot of sense. And it is. It's all about strength, and it's knowing what type of strength is warranted for what type of situation.
Exactly. Not everything requires a hammer.
No.
Not everything is a nail. Mm-hmm. When you see everything as a nail, that's all you are, is a hammer. And there's sometimes nails that we have to deal with, but not everybody.
Not most of the time. I mean, in more rural areas, that's not most of the time.
And I think an honest person, if they stop and they step back away from this and look at our U.S. Navy SEALs and look at the things that they've done and look at the warriors through time, that those warriors did have a great amount of compassion. They did have that's why they became a warrior in the first place, was to protect the people. Well, let's not just be the muscle that protects the people, let's protect them in all other areas and facets of life as well. We talked about, and I don't know if it was in our last show, but we talked about Shop with the Cop. We do Shop with the Cop up here every year and have done it for several years. We do Special Olympics. There's a lot of other programs like that, but we don't want it just to be isolated to the programs. It has to be on every contact that we make with people in the public, so that those people see who it is that's serving and truly see who it is that is serving them. And when we stop and have that conversation, when we stop and we build that relationship, that garners trust, and that comes back.
Oh, absolutely. And it also helps with the health aspect of our police, because if you're doing humanitarian things and you're actually making a positive impact in a person's life and making a true difference and seeing that, you walk away just feeling rejuvenated.
The best way to help yourself is to lose yourself in service of others. It really is. If you're not feeling right about something, if you're not feeling right about yourself, go out and help somebody. And the minute you get done, and you may not be very motivated to go out and help somebody, but like you said, when you're done, you feel a lot better about yourself and about the situation that you're in, because you provided that service, and even that service comes back around. And when we throw the word out humanitarian there, I'm not advocating that officers every weekend on their days off need to be out building homes for people, and that. What I'm saying is that in their everyday routine, for lack of a better word, in their everyday deployment, in calls for service, when we have interactions with the public, that interaction has to be an interaction that builds trust.
Because that will last a long time.
It will endure. And it takes us back to the principles that the policing was founded on, that the police are the people and the people are the police. Mm-hmm. We are the people, and the people are us.
And you're building, as you move forward, you're building your support one person at a time, so that when those things do happen that are more of a negative light and that aren't, whether they truly are or aren't portrayed like they're supposed to be, you have that person going, no, I don't believe that.
Well, and that even translates into actually the public activating and coming out and open fighting for the police, which I've also seen.
And we become the warriors for our
That's
warriors.
right.
Yeah,
that's right.
cool.
Because we're not supposed to engage in political stuff, and I hate politics. I really do.
Having a hard time with it as
when
well.
we respond to someone's house, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter who you support, it doesn't matter. You're somebody who's in need, who has called us there, and we need to apply the law and do the right thing for the right reason. End of story. That's what we're there for, and there should be no, and we spoke just, I think, before we came on here, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but a lot of the issues that are going on with some of the major metropolitan police departments around the country, one in particular, is because City Hall is too close to their police department, telling them too much what to do, too much involved with the decisions that the police department makes. And when that starts happening and taking place, now you've interjected politics into policing, and it has no place.
Well, and they don't understand from the ground up what policing is. You can't really put anything on policing if you don't understand it.
That's right.
And then that's when it gets all confused and discombobulated. Right. And I've seen that happen in other places where you have people come in, and it could be as easy as, we did an event, we were in charge of the cake stuff, everything was going great, and then this woman came in and just interjected herself, and then it went and got all screwed up. It was that simple of a process. That one person interjecting who didn't know the system, didn't understand what was happening,
but wanted something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But
and thought they could attain it. So,
yeah.
So that's the other thing about policing, is that I don't care who you are, and nobody should care who you are. If you've called us because you're in need, what can we do to help you?
Absolutely. Do you have anything in closing that you would like to, any information you'd like to give out?
Well, just thank you for your time. There's so much in here.
No.
There's so much meat in here. I'd encourage people to go look at the Peelian principles. The modern policing was founded by Sir Robert Peel. It's in the early 1800s, and he wrote 9 principles of policing that when you look at those principles, you say, okay, is it more likely that a warrior with a sword and shield is going to do this, or a guardian and a protector is going to do this? And remember, I think they're the same. I think a warrior is a guardian. 90% of those are guardian traits. 90% of those principles fall under a guardian trait, not a warrior trait. And if we want to ensure the democracy that we've been entrusted to protect, then we must continue to live by those principles. Societies flounder and things go wrong when people disregard the principles that they were founded on. And I think it's a big mistake should we do that here. And from the way that it looks, policing's not going to do that. They're going to respond appropriately. Our first Blue Courage class is coming up at the end of March here. In
Congratulations. That's a big accomplishment. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's a couple of instructors up here that are certified in it as well, and they've taken the lead on that and got it set up. So end of March, we will start training officers in this area on Blue Courage.
Well, thank you so much, Commander Sargent, for sharing this information.
Thank you for your time.
Very valuable, and thank you for what you're doing for the community.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Safe and Sound, and we'll see you next month.